I'm apologizing up front to this video. You may hear some wind back and forth. Started out as a sunny day and now big clouds are coming on. It looks like we're going to get rain again, even though they promised us we won't. We seem to be in monsoon season or something. But also you will hear shots in the background. I live near a shooting range. I'm a member of that range. I prefer to think of them as just apocalyptic background. Anyway, on with the video. Like many of you, I've been watching the miniseries Chernobyl on HBO. And if you haven't watched it and you have access to HBO, I really recommend that you do. Now initially I was kind of put off because here it is taking place in the Ukraine, Soviet Union, and nobody has a Russian type accent. They all talk with an English accent. And I couldn't help but thinking if Yellow, the person who played Martin Luther King in Selma, would have been talking with his native English accent, how it would have been panned by the critics and the audience. But that aside, I really think this is an interesting miniseries, and there are lessons for us as preppers. Now, it was the late 70s, and I remember going with my husband to see the movie The China Syndrome. And it starred Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon, and Michael Douglas. And it was about an investigative reporter who felt there was a cover-up from something going on at a local nuclear power plant. And it opened people's eyes to what might happen, even though what they were describing was not plausible, couldn't happen, and was not scientifically based. But I remember thinking, wow, what if? And here in Michigan, we have 3 active nuclear power plants. Now, the weird thing after the film that I just described was that 3 days after that film premiered, 3 Mile accident happened in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And again, it opened Americans' eyes to the what-if factor of living next door to the nuclear power plant. Well, a Gallup poll in 2010 showed that 62% of Americans were in favor of nuclear power. Now, that was the year before Fukushima happened. That happened in 2011. So as of 2016, when they did a Gallup poll, 54% were opposed to nuclear power. So we've really kind of changed America with saying, maybe the risks aren't worth the rewards. And my understanding is it's getting higher and higher to make a profit also from nuclear power plants. So we might be seeing the tide shift. But what lessons can we learn as preppers from Chernobyl, Fukushima, and the 3 Mile nuclear plant accident? Well, number 1, don't trust the government or a corporation. And as preppers, I think we already know that, right? That's one of the reasons we're preppers. We are mistrustful of others. And we kind of know what might happen, and we'd like to know the truth. And we don't always get the truth from the government or for corporations, And here in the United States, it is utility companies that own these plants. And do they want to release information that would worry their investors or make them look bad? I don't think so. Well, in the Chernobyl miniseries, of course, the government didn't want to release information, period, to the people living in the area, to the media, or to the world. And even the KGB was involved in hushing info. So number 2, communication. There are usually problems in communication in any type of disaster, and these nuclear disasters are no exception. Now, I've already talked about the Soviet Union not wanting to release any information. In fact, the way this was found out was a worker at a Sweden nuclear plant discovered higher amounts of radiation and tracked it back to Chernobyl. So that's how the world found out about Chernobyl. Obviously, there wasn't communication going on there. But there are problems at the other 2 instances. For Fukushima, the Prime Minister of Japan did not trust the head of the company that was in charge of the nuclear power plant and really didn't understand the science behind it, and there was a lot of communication problems because of that. And then the new, I don't know if it's president, but CEO, whatever, of the utility company that owns the plant now, admitted that there was a cover-up, so to speak, because they told all employees, anyone, you could never mention the word meltdown. So they were protecting their asset and their face to the public. Well, on 3 Mile Island, there was a lot of panic on the amount of the public and a lot of miscommunication. Let me read you something from an article. Quote, what made these significant was a series of misunderstandings caused in part by problems of communication with various state and federal agencies. Because of confused telephone conversations between people uninformed about the plant's status, officials concluded that the 1200 millirems reading was an off-site reading. They also believed that another hydrogen explosion was possible and that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had ordered evacuation and that a meltdown was conceivable. So this caused widespread panic, and of course the media is feeding that fear. You know, if you've watched my channel long at all, I hate all the fear porn that is propagated by the media and even the Weather Channel. And in this instance, again, media were reporting incidents they did not understand and scaring the public at large. So, as preppers, we know to view any communication, we have to have our filters on. Does this make sense? Is this scientifically accurate? How should I perceive this information? And we know not to get information from just one source. So 3, inadequate emergency training. In all 3 instances, it was determined that there were not enough safety education and not enough emergency preparedness training if something would happen. And as preppers, we know that's very important. We have to learn about something, but then we have to also practice and do it so it becomes part of our muscle memory. And this was lacking in all 3 of those disasters. Equipment malfunction or inadequate equipment. You know, in the Chernobyl miniseries, it shows that the radiation detectors that they kept in the control room had a maximum. And so when they reported the reading, it was that maximum, not the actual reading, which was way, way higher. So understand your equipment, have the right equipment available and readily accessible, because when they did realize that, the equipment was not readily accessible. Now let me read you a little something from 3 Mile Island. The accident to Unit 2 happened at 4 a.m. on March 28, 1979, when the reactor was operating at 97% power. It involved a relatively minor malfunction in the secondary cooling circuit, which caused the temperature in the primary coolant to rise. This in turn caused the reactor to shut down automatically. Shutdown took about 1 second. At this point, a relief valve failed to close. But instrumentation did not reveal the fact, and so much of the primary coolant drained away from the residual decay heat in the reactor core was not removed. The core suffered severe damage as a result. So, equipment doesn't always work, and that's why one is none, right, as preppers? So we know to buy quality equipment and to check it often and to read the user manual. Number 5, human error. In all 3 of the instances, human error played a part in the disaster. Part of it was bad decision making, bad planning, and sometimes pushing the wrong button. And let me read this sobering statement. This is according to the Union of Concerned Scientists. There were 10, quote, near misses, unquote, at U.S. reactors in 2015, events that potentially increased the risk of a meltdown by at least 10 times due to human error. And that's what we have to remember as preppers. We all make mistakes, and we will continue to make mistakes. So, it is important that we try to stay calm in an emergency and try to think clearly. But we will make mistakes. Now, number 6 is one of my favorite because I think it is my family's motto, and that is Murphy's Law. Nothing is as easy as it looks. Everything takes longer than you expect. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong, and at the worst possible moment. And that is so true. Now, for Fukushima, there had been some studies that showed that there would be a problem with that plant if they ever experienced, I believe it was a earthquake, 9.0 earthquake. But they thought, what's the risk? Really, could that really happen? Would it happen? They didn't think so. And it would probably be very costly to prevent that from happening. So nothing was done about it. And what happened? We had that earthquake and we had that terrible tsunami. Murphy's Law happened. And to me, that's why you have to have multiple plans when you're planning for a SHTF situation. Plan A, B, C, whatever. You have to be flexible because things will be thrown in your path that you don't expect. And believe me, Murphy's Law reigns in SHTF, fatalism. And what I mean by this is when you look at the people, after they learned that they had been exposed to high doses of radiation, a lot of them became fatalistic. I'm going to drink as much vodka as I want, smoke as many cigarettes as I want, and Lord, they were smoking a lot of cigarettes in that miniseries. And eat unhealthy, because what does it matter? I'm going to die soon anyway. And believe it or not, that attitude made it harder to get accurate records of what illness was really caused by unhealthy habits or by radiation. Interestingly enough, this is what we found so far. Scientifically proven illnesses from the radiation. This is according to the WHO expert group. They revealed there's no evidence of increased cancer risk apart from thyroid cancer that can be clearly attributed to radiation from Chernobyl. Aside from the recent finding on leukemia risk among Chernobyl liquidators, reports indicate a small increase in the incidence of premenopausal breast cancer in the most contaminated areas, which appear to be related to radiation dose. Both of these findings need confirmation from a well-designed epidemiological study. So, yes, thyroid cancer was expected, and it did happen. And it was even more occurring among children who were drinking milk contaminated by radiation from cows that were contaminated from radiation. But not as high an incidence as people expected, and it's hard to prove if you don't have concrete statistics on what the normal incidence was in the area and what the incidence is now. I am sure that there are health-related incidents that cannot be scientifically proven that occurred, but in reality, it's not as bad as you expected. Now, you will watch people that say there's all these birth defects and all of these things. Could be, but these haven't been scientifically proven. And I'm thinking here, we all here believe that there's higher incidence of leukemia because of all the plastic industries in the area. But it hasn't been scientifically proven yet. So if somebody gets it, they're going to blame it on that, but it doesn't mean it really happened because of that. And the same could be happening there in the Ukraine. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is heroism and patriotism. If you watch this mini-series, it was astounding how many people risked their own life for the greater good. It really pulls on your heartstrings. There's 3 young men that volunteer to go in, and knowing that they will probably die, so they could turn on the water valves. There's young men who had to go on the rooftop, only 90 seconds, and shovel off severely contaminated graphite waste. Again, knowing that they were possibly being contaminated by radiation. There were the miners that actually tunneled under the core. Again, high chance of radiation. And there is the scientists who were risking imprisonment by trying to find the truth. And lastly, there were the men who had to do animal control and go from house to house, kill off any farm animals, dogs, cats, whatever that they found, to try to cut the risk of radiation being spread through migrating animals. And believe me, that might not have been as much of as a radiation exposure, but definitely a mental stress to your psyche, and I'm sure it caused long-term problems also. So, in any prepping situation, any SHTF, there probably will be heroes, but don't depend on it. This is Prepper Potpourri saying, please comment down below and let me know if you live near a plant, and do you think we should continue to have nuclear power? Love to hear your comments. Bye.